After George Michael's tragic death, it took 3 long years for his will to come out, and his last wishes were utterly disturbing. George Michael. Just the sound of the name is so crisp, so cool. Too cool, one would say. Well, that is because it is not his real name. In fact, his real name isn't even English. George Michael was born Georgios Kyriakos Panayiotou, the son of a Greek Cypriot. His father was a restaurateur who emigrated to London from Cyprus. George Michael wanted to be a pop star since he was a child. But it wasn't until high school that he began his journey towards superstardom, though he did have some help in achieving his dreams. While attending high school, a teenage George Michael became close friends with Andrew Ridgeley, the other half of Wham!, the band that would soon make both boys very famous. George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley worked hard to make their musical dreams a reality. But George took things a step further. He worked as a DJ and began busking on the London Underground during his teenage years. Michael prepared himself for a life in the public eye by belting out his favourite songs to commuters. His favourite was Queen's classic 39. Before there was a Wham!, there was The Executive. Michael and Ridgeley's first crack at musical fame saw the duo try to ride the trend for ska music all the way to the top of the charts. There was just one problem. The duo were not believable Rastafarians. Multiple record companies rejected their demo without a second thought. Careless Whisper will forever be on the lips of anyone who is talking about George Michael. However, the song has a secret. Michael himself wasn't a huge fan. He was only 17 when he wrote the ditty, and he later dismissed it as immature and trite. According to Michael, when he wrote it, he didn't know anything about life or love, and he couldn't believe people still resonated with the song. Though Michael may not have known anything about relationships, he knew how to write a hit. Not a man to ever let his surroundings distract him, 17-year-old Michael wrote Careless Whisper while on his way to work, sitting on a public bus. Wham! Was wildly successful, but the group also received intense backlash. Many critics dismissed them as vapid teeny boppers with one-hit song, even though Michael and Ridgeley insisted that they were poking fun at the idea of hyper-glamorous teen idols. With the music industry criticising his every move, Michael became frustrated. When Michael first split up with his Wham! Bandmate Ridgeley, many people weren't sure if he would be successful as a solo artist. Michael proved his naysayers very wrong. His first solo album, Faith, was an instant smash for the 22-year-old. He had 5 #1 singles on the album, but controversy surrounded Michael as soon as the album hit. When Michael first released I Want Your Sex as a single from Faith, he found himself shrouded in scandal. The song was far more explicit than anyone was prepared for. Most radio stations in both the UK and the US banned the song, which actually helped with album sales, and MTV kept the video from the air during daytime hours, choosing to only air it late at night. I Want Your Sex was racy for another reason too. The video famously featured Michael's real-life girlfriend, Kathy Jung, who was deeply in love with Michael, all while Michael was in love with another man. At this time, Michael was still hiding his homosexuality by saying he was bisexual. The whole situation was, in a word, messy. And that's not even the extent of it all. George Michael genuinely thought he was bisexual for some time. Over the years, he had fallen in love with different girls, like Kathy Jung, and although he suspected he might have feelings for men, it wasn't until he spotted a man named Anselmo Filipa in the crowd at the Rock in Rio concert in Brazil that he genuinely fell in love for this first time with the same gender. Once Michael saw Filipa, he was immediately smitten, and apparently, Filipa returned these warm feelings. The men quickly struck up an intense relationship, and Filipa even became Michael's first public male lover. However, their bond wouldn't last, for an utterly tragic reason. Only 6 months into their relationship, Filipa and Michael received the worst news possible. Filipa had tested positive for HIV. On Michael's side, he felt especially distraught because not only was his partner battling a serious disease, he also couldn't turn to many people for support. You see, at this point, Michael's family still didn't know that he was gay. Around this time, Freddie Mercury sadly passed away from complications related to AIDS. George Michael was the only person who could come close to filling in for Mercury. So, when Queen asked him to perform at Mercury's tribute concert in 1992, it was a no-brainer. Michael delivered a heartfelt, passionate rendition of Somebody to Love. To this day, it's his most famous live performance, but not everyone knows the full story about why. George Michael's performance of Somebody to Love instantly went down in musical history for its raw emotion and powerful intensity. Though Michael was singing in honor of Freddie Mercury's memory, he was also paying tribute to someone even closer, Anselmo Filipa, who was at the time fighting for his life. Sadly, one of Michael's most revered tracks came from a place of agony. In 1993, Anselmo passed away, and George Michael grieved for years to follow. He wrote the acclaimed song Jesus to a Child about losing his lover. There's a tragic bookend to the story of Michael's love for Filipa. When Michael first began to act on his attraction to men, he was filming the music video for I Want Your Sex. In the video, he writes the words "Explore monogamy" on Kathy Jung's body, urging his fans to be careful about seeing multiple people during the AIDS crisis. Sadly, this epidemic was the exact thing that ended Michael's lover's life. After being in the spotlight for almost a decade straight, George Michael was understandably tired. And to make matters worse, his relationship with his record label Sony was not going well. Michael hated that he was trapped in a contract with them and felt like they weren't listening to any of his ideas about how to market his music. So one day, he lashed out. In 1990, Michael refused to appear in music videos for Sony and made music history in the process. Instead of starring Michael, the groundbreaking video for Freedom had 90s supermodels like Cindy Crawford and Naomi Campbell lip sync in Michael's place. The video for Freedom showed the models lighting Michael's famous leather jacket from the Faith music video on fire. This was a sign that Michael wouldn't let Sony force him back into the pop star mold. After the Brazen video became a hit, Sony received Michael's message loud and clear and tried to make peace with the singer. However, these good times wouldn't last. In 1997, Michael tragically lost his mother, Leslie, to cancer. Michael had always been extremely close to his mum, and it was absolutely heart-wrenching for Michael to lose her. Unfortunately, he wouldn't have much time to grieve. Just 1 year later, Michael's personal life would be splashed across newspapers all over the world. 1998 was a turning point in George Michael's life. Though by then he had been out of the closet to those closest to him, he wasn't out to the public about his sexuality. That is, until the police detained him for engaging in a lewd act in a public restroom. His arrest essentially outed him to the public. How he was detained, however, was even more controversial. Michael was arrested as part of a larger sting operation by local police, who were going undercover into public restrooms and luring men into engaging in sexual behaviour. After they brought him in, Michael pleaded no contest, paid a small fine, and served community service. But that wasn't enough to keep his mouth shut. Not long after this, Michael released a video for his single Outside. In the amazing video, Michael satirized the event by dressing as a Village People inspired officer and featuring men dressed as police officers making out with each other. The arresting officer tried to sue Michael for $10 million, but the judge dismissed the case. That video is well worth the watch, but Michael's bad boy days weren't over. Michael had always been a bit of a wild child and often indulged in substances, even getting charged for possession 3 different times. Fans began to worry that Michael was spiraling out of control. Sadly, he was. Suddenly, George Michael engaged in a battle for his life. Before he was supposed to perform a huge concert, he began to suffer from chest pains and shortness of breath. After he went to the hospital, the medical staff revealed that Michael had caught a dangerous bout of pneumonia. At one point, he became so ill that he was rushed to the ICU and even fell into a coma. Thankfully, he recovered, but it was a very, very close call. George Michael had his fair share of problems over the years, and in 2009, he admitted in an interview that he would smoke up to 25 spliffs a day. That's a lot of grass, even for someone like George Michael. But don't worry, during the interview, Michael said he was down to only 7 or 8 per day. Relationships are all about compromise, especially when you're in a relationship with George Michael. He and his one-time partner Kenny Goss kept a somewhat open affair throughout their time together. In an interview, Michael once stated that he and Goss often saw other men, and that it was an accepted part of their relationship. After the 2010 Gay Pride Parade in London, Michael went from his highest high to his lowest low. He crashed his car into a shop while driving under the influence of substances. Later in the year, he was forced to serve time and received a 5-year driving ban. At this point, fans were officially worried about Michael's mental state, and they weren't the only ones. Beside fans, superstars were also worried about Michael's behaviour. Fellow music icon Elton John had been close friends with Michael for years, even recording a beloved duet of Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me with him. Over time, however, Michael's substance use tore them apart. John tried repeatedly to intervene in Michael's struggles, but every time, Michael resisted. In 2011, George Michael underwent a tracheotomy. During this surgical procedure, he slipped into a coma. When he came to, something was very wrong. When Michael awoke from his coma, he was speaking in a funny way. As it turns out, he woke up inflicted with foreign accent syndrome, a speech disorder that changes the way a person speaks due to brain trauma. Many celebrities are too familiar with stalkers, George Michael included. According to Michael, the authorities don't even do anything about them most of the time. And Michael once had a woman serial stalk him and even break into his house 7 times. 7. Then, one day, Michael is taking a stroll on his street and poof, There she is, hanging out on his street, wearing his clothes. Because George Michael was, well, George Michael, the tabloids kept a close watch on him. And by close, we mean as close as they possibly could. One tabloid hired 2 paparazzi to station themselves outside of Michael's house. This way, if anything ever happened, they were there to document the crazy life of George Michael. Well, unfortunately for those reporters, they'd be out of a job very soon. George Michael once called the producers of the famous quiz show Deal or No Deal with a heartbreaking request. Michael had seen a contestant appear on the show as an attempt to raise money for her IVF treatment. Instead of sitting by, Michael intervened. He personally donated money to her so that she could get the IVF treatment. She had a daughter in 2012. I'm not crying, you're crying. For quite some time, George Michael volunteered at a local homeless shelter. For most stars, this would be a photo op, but not Michael. He specifically asked the shelter and other volunteers to please keep his presence under wraps. He didn't want to draw any unnecessary attention to himself or his philanthropy. Instead, Michael just wanted to help out. Many people are working as barmaids to pay their bills, and a lot of these people are working to pay for school or some other debt. Michael was well aware of this and was especially familiar with working nurse students. Ever since they had cared for his ailing mother, he'd held nurses in a special esteem. That's part of why Michael once tipped a barmaid £5,000 to help her pay for nursing school. The famous UK morning show This Morning turned out to be one of George Michael's favourite programs. He would watch it daily, and sometimes he would secretly lend a helping hand to those who appeared on the show. On more than one occasion, he phoned into the show to donate money to a guest who had discussed their health problems. Speaking of health problems, when he was just 53 years old, George Michael passed, dying at home in his bed with his beloved partner Fadi Fawaz by his side. In the days after Michael's sudden demise, the world wondered if he had relapsed and drugs had caused his death. However, the truth was much different. The singer had succumbed to heart and liver issues. Yet, just when people thought George Michael didn't have any more surprises in store, he proved them wrong. Soon enough, shocking revelations came out. George Michael was always beloved for his holiday songs like Last Christmas and Do They Know It's Christmas. Because of this, his last days on Earth had a special significance. The singer perished on Christmas Day of 2016. However, as loving tributes poured in to honour the late singer, Michael's family got ready for a dramatic funeral. George Michael adored his hairdresser photographer boyfriend Fadi Fawaz, but the rest of the Michael clan, not so much. They detested Fadi, and in the 3 months between Michael's demise and his funeral, rumours swirled that they would bar Fadi from attending the funeral. To quote one of Michael's relatives, "Heaven help if he turns up." Yowza. In the end, Fadi did attend Michael's funeral, but was not invited to come to the wake. Michael's ex-partner of 13 years, Kenny Goss, the family gave him a pass, inviting him to both events. That doesn't sound dramatic at all. It took 3 long years of endless legal battles before George Michael's will was finally revealed. And when it finally came out, all the squabbling suddenly made sense. The will distributed money to Michael's immediate family and many of Michael's friends from the 1980s, but had some huge omissions. For example, Michael's old Wham partner, Andrew Ridgeley, was snubbed. Why? To this day, we're still not sure. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.